Joseph Parker over the weekend had a brilliant win over Zhilei Zhang. In back-to-back fights to fight Deontay Wilder and Zhilei Zhang and to win both of them, that's impressive. And obviously, I don't really do boxing at the end of the year awards or anything like that, but if you wanted to do a comeback of the year for 2024, considering the Wilder fight was in the back end of 2023, the last few days, you would say it's Joseph Parker to come back from September of 22, getting knocked out by Joe Joyce in a fight that he was really really beaten up in. To go and take the scalp of the man who beat Joe Joyce twice, and to take the scalp, well, Fury already took that, but you know what I mean, to go and beat Deontay Wilder. It really is a testament to Joseph Parker, and Joseph Parker, I think, has firmly established himself in the top five of the heavyweight division, and some would argue that when all said and done with this era of fighters, whilst Joseph Parker is not the best, I don't think anyone's going to claim that he is. He's certainly staked his claim to be in the top five and probably be ahead of the likes of Deontay Wilder, because when you ask people, well, Joe Parker, Deontay Wilder, who's better? I say the majority would say Wilder. You say, why Wilder? Oh, he's a better resume. He was champion longer. Well, he was champion longer, but, it did help the fact that he barely had to defend it against anybody good. He had his mandatories, Berman Stavern, he had Dominic Brazil as a mandatory. He never unified. At least with Joseph Parker, he did try and unify. He lost, but nevertheless, he still tried to unify. And when you look at the resumes, I don't want to go and do a big, long-winded resume of Wilder and Parker, because I've already done a WTF on Deontay Wilder where I've talked about his resume. I did it just after Christmas. You can go back and watch it. It's on the channel. I think it's got about 12, 13,000 views. But when I look at his resume as champion, Berman Stavern, twice. Eric Molina, Johan Duapas, Arthur Spilker, Chris Arreola, Gerald Washington, Luis Ortiz, a draw with Tyson Fury, Dominic Brazil, another win over Luis Ortiz, Bo L's to Tyson Fury, so on and so forth. You don't even want to go back at the start of it. But that was Wilder's resume. Out of those names that you see there, the two that jump out at you are Bermane Stiverne, because when he fought Deontay Wilder, he had a record of 24-1, and he was dangerous, Stiverne. He certainly could punch. For all of his flaws, he could certainly do that, but he was a plodder. He was about 15, 20 pounds too heavy, and he just couldn't do anything with Deontay Wilder, and he never was the same after that fight. And then you have Luis Ortiz, who we fought in 2018 and 2019 respectively. Listen, Ortiz now, I've heard rumours about who Ortiz may very well be fighting next, and I think I've even heard that he might even be fighting Jared Anderson later on in the year. There was some people speculating that. Obviously it's not the case in his next fight, but Ortiz, what has he done before, since? His best win is arguably Brian Jennings. So they're his best wins. He didn't beat Tyson Fury. He lost both those fights, and he lost against Joseph Parker. Whereas you contrast that to Joseph Parker's resume, I mean, he had Carlos Takam on his resume, who you could argue, I would say he's on par with Luis Ortiz. Maybe Ortiz, prime for prime, was a little bit better than Carlos Takam, but Carlos Takam, to be fighting him before you've even won a title, is quite impressive. He took the O of Andy Ruiz, and that win has aged like fine wine, given the fact that he was able to beat Anthony Joshua, become heavyweight champion. Yeah, he lost to Anthony Joshua in the rematch, but Joe Parker was the guy who showed Anthony Joshua, this is what you do with Andy Ruiz. Joshua could do it better because he's got bigger dimensions and he's just a little bit better, I think, than Joseph Parker. Took the O of Hughie Fury. Has that win aged well? Jury's out on that one a bit. When's the last time Hughie Fury actually fought? It'll be 3 years come October Hughie Fury would have last fought. That's crazy. Really is. He obviously lost back-to-back fights to Anthony Joshua and Dillian Whyte. I think that the Dillian Whyte fight, he lost that fight more than Dillian Whyte won it. And against Anthony Joshua, the scorecards were a little bit too wide. It was a little bit closer than the scorecards would tell you. The referee didn't help the contest. What was his name? Giuseppe Quantarini. He didn't help the fight at all, but I think Joshua would have still won. Then Joe Parker goes on a bit of a lull. He fights Alexander Flores, he fights Alex Leopai, Shondell Winters, and then he has that fight in New Zealand against Junior Fa. Now, at the time, Junior Fa was undefeated. That was February of 2021. It was one of the first fights we'd seen in a while that actually had full attendance in it. It was nice to see. And the fight definitely didn't live up. It was actually a fairly interesting card, that, because Hemi Awo, I think is how you say that guy's name, fought Julius Long. That was a really fun fight. If you've not seen that, I think that was a rematch because I think they fought before. But that was I remember that fight. That was a really fun fight. David Nyeka made his debut against an absolute no-hoper. I remember that guy went down on the first punch of the fight and it barely even landed. But Joe Parker in the main event fought Junior Fa. It wasn't a great fight. It really wasn't. And yeah, I think people kind of left with a bit of a bad taste in their mouth. And after that fight, Joseph Parker got on a plane. He came to Ireland to train with Andy Lee. That was a bit of a head scratcher. It just seemed quite kind of out of left field. But then, no sooner did he beat Junior Fa, he goes in there and he fights Derek Chisora, and he really doesn't look good in that fight. That was in Manchester. I think that might have been behind closed doors. Don't quote me on that. I think it may have been behind closed doors. I think that was one of the last fights that they had behind closed doors. Split decision, down in the first round. Didn't look good in that fight. Then he has some time to adjust, get used to Andy Lee. Rematches Derek Chisora in the Manchester Arena again, this time with a full attendance in December of 2021. A good performance, dropped Derek Chisora a couple of times. Realistically, he should have stopped Chisora. He didn't. He made the fight a little bit closer than it needed to be. But this was Joseph Parker, getting really into the swing of things. And bear in mind, Joseph Parker is only 32 years old. He's not an old man. He still has plenty of time as a heavyweight. But at this time, you look at the resume and you're saying, look, Andy Ruiz, Carlos Takam, Hughie Fury, although the win hasn't aged well, Junior Fa, Derek Chisora, it's a lot more... They're a lot more lively than some of the guys Deontay Wilder has been facing, with the greatest of respect. Then he goes and he fights Joe Joyce. Now, I remember at the time, they didn't announce the fight on the undercard of Fury versus White. They basically said, Warren, that it's good to go. They were going to do it in July in the OVO in London. Didn't happen. Joe Joyce ended up fighting Christian Hammer. Joseph Parker made the decision to sign with Ben Shalom. I assume he regretted it instantly because he's no longer with him, and I assume he said, probably will tell you, I've done many bad things in my life that I regret, and that's probably the most. That's probably one of the most. But he got lucky. He got away from it. He didn't suffer the Coley fate. He's all right. He's all right for now. Joe Parker. He's safe. So don't worry. But he fought Joe Joyce. That was on TNT. It was on a Queensbury show. Not really. Like the scorecards will tell you that it was kind of competitive. It really wasn't. Joseph Parker was beaten up in that fight by Joe Joyce and taken out brutally in the 11th round. Really big knockout. Came back and fought Jack Massey. Didn't look good in that fight. That was on the undercard of Chris Eubank versus Liam Smith. I had to think, was it Williams or Smith? It was Smith. And yeah, close scorecards. Not a good performance by Joseph Parker. And Jack Massey lost a point in that fight as well. Really not good. Goes back to his homeland, he goes back to Australia, I should say, because obviously he's from New Zealand. They're actually, even though they're close on a map, they're quite far apart. Goes and has a first round knockout over a guy 15-3. Fights Simon Keane on the undercard of Fury versus Ngannou. Again, not a great opponent, Simon Keane. He only had one loss at the time, but yeah, Simon Keane, he was nothing to really write home about. You could just tell by looking at him that this guy was not in the same league as Joseph Parker. Looks good on that card. Obviously, His Excellency liked what he saw from Parker because he brought him in to fight Deontay Wilder in his very next fight 3 months later, and he goes in there and he beats Deontay Wilder. Yeah, Deontay Wilder didn't let his hands go. He did look like a bit of a fish out of water, it had to be said, but Joseph Parker did what he needed to do. He was clinical, he was safe all the way, he didn't take any unnecessary shots, and he gets the win over Deontay Wilder. And then he, in his last fight, goes and beats Zhilei Zhang, who a lot of people had ranked as their top 3 heavyweights. Some would even have had him in front of Anthony Joshua at the time, based upon the resume he was gaining for himself. 2 wins over Joe Joyce. Some felt he should have had a win over Filip Hrgovic. So for Joseph Parker now, when you contrast the resumes, I'll just bring it back up here. When you contrast these resumes, it's night and day who the better resume is. Well, it's Joseph Parker. Zhilei Zhang, Wilder himself, Derek Chisora, Andy Ruiz and Carlos Takam, to name a few, are much better than Luis Ortiz, Berman Stavern and a draw with Tyson Fury. Dominic Brazil, what's Dominic Brazil doing these days? He's not fought in 3 years since he fought Otto Wallin. So Joseph Parker puts Deontay Wilder to shame in the resume department. And yeah, he was only champion for a little over a year, about a year and a half. Wilder was champion for a lot longer. He was champion for about 5 years. It did help that he could take these voluntaries. He could take these fairly easy voluntaries. He could take on the likes of Luis Ortiz. He could take on a less than stellar Tyson Fury, a less than optimum Tyson Fury, and have mandatories like Berman Stavern and Dominic Brazil chucked upon him. Joseph Parker was straight into a mandatory with Hughie Fury. Joseph Parker, when he cleared that mandatory, was straight into a unification with Anthony Joshua. And even after he loses the unification with Anthony Joshua, he's still taking big fights. He's still trying to prove himself. And he's still doing great things as a heavyweight now. Joseph Parker is a baby in terms of heavyweight years. 32 years old. People would be saying you've got a good 6-7 years left ahead of you. And he has this resume now. It's impressive. And he puts Deontay Wilder, in my opinion, to shame. To shame. Joseph Parker does. Absolutely. Again, I'm not going to have it be a long-winded, WTF or career review, but you only have to look at the names I just talked about there and contrast that with the guys Deontay Wilder has fought. Joseph Parker has done the better work. 100%. Better wins, better resume, and as it proven, better fighter. So I want to give Joseph Parker mad props. He has to rematch, most likely, Zhilei Zhang. He's going to want to be careful, because he had some nervy moments in that fight, very nervy moments. He's going to be careful in the rematch. But I think that he will know the lay of the land. And I do think Joe Parker will be better in the rematch. He'll need to be. But he was good in the first fight, excuse me. So that's my thoughts. Let me know yours. Joe Parker, Deontay Wilder. Contrast their resumes. Who is better, in your opinion? Let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed it, people. Smash the like button if you could. Subscribe, of course, as always, if you haven't already. For now, lads, I'll leave it there. Peace.